Presentation aids can be very helpful to any speaker as long as it follows the rules that it is there to aid the presenter. It is not to become the focus of attention in a speech, and it must contribute to whatever the speaker is discussing. It doesn't need to be used for the sake of being used. When dealing with an aid, there's two areas that you need to evaluate, or you must evaluate a speaker on. First is the development and design of that aid, and then secondly is the use of that aid. In dealing with the design elements, it needs to be visible, clearly visible from the back of the room. Whoever's sitting in the very back row should easily be able to see the aid, see what's written on it or drawn on it, which means you'll need to make sure the font size is large enough. You also need to make sure that the color scheme that is used doesn't clash with each other. They're complementary and makes it easy to see and understand the information that's presented on that visual aid. The presentation aid also should have minimal information on it. There should not be a lot of writing. In fact, one of the common mistakes is presenters will tend to put every word they're going to say on a slide. That is incorrect use of a presentation aid. So not only must it have minimal information, it needs to be clearly visible from the back of the room. It needs to be aesthetically pleasing. And you need to be able to proofread it to ensure there are no mistakes, spelling or grammar errors on that aid. Having mistakes on a presentation aid will only detract the attention of the audience, as they will notice those errors and then judge the speaker accordingly. Low credibility can derive from having mistakes on a presentation aid. Now, that's the design of the aid. When using the aid, there are certain rules that a speaker must follow. They should never have the aid displayed until they're ready to talk about it. Oftentimes, a speaker will have an aid showing throughout his or her entire speech. What that does is make the audience pay attention to that aid, not the speaker, thus going against our number one rule. The aid becomes the focus, not the speaker. It should only be there to aid the speaker. Secondly is talking to the aid, either having something in your hand that the speaker talks to, or looking back and talking to the screen. At the point where the speaker looks at the screen, he or she turns his attention from the audience to the screen, which means the audience will look at the screen as well, or the aid if it's something they bring in. At that point, that aid has become the focus of attention of the presentation and not the speaker, him or herself. So you should never talk to it. You should never handle it until you're ready to show it. You should never read from the screen. Very often we see speakers who will turn to a screen and read every word that's on that screen. You should never do that. You should have minimal information, and it's used just to kind of help jog your memory and help the audience get a visual idea of what you're talking about. You should also maintain the visibility of that presentation aid, which means you should never stand in front of a screen, or if you have the object that you bring in, a model or something, that you're not holding it behind your back as you're talking about it. You want to make sure the audience can see it. So when evaluating a presentation aid, it can extremely help the presentation, but at the same time, on the other extreme, it can hurt that presentation if done poorly. So make sure you have a good design and you use it correctly.